Freedomizers. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Thursday, March 5th, 2015 edition of Zone 13, the best afternoon news show on the web. We're broadcasting live from the studios of FreedomizerRadio.com. And, of course, you all know me. I'm Anne Moretti. And my great co-host, Scott Ferrarello, is here with me, too. And we appreciate you tuning in with us. Thank you so much. Our call-in number is 347-324-3704. But hold off on calling for a little while. We have a lot of news to get to today, and we're going to just race right through it. There's so much to tell you. Anyhow, our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at FreedomizerRadio.com, are open for you, too. Some of our awesome colleagues, Lynn, Famous Anna, AstroTurf, are in the chats putting links, documents, articles, and other important information in there so you have it available to you. And thank you, ladies, for that wonderful courtesy. Our colleagues do a whole lot more than put links in our chat rooms. They're the best researchers I've ever met in my life, and they're more than that, they're friends. Anyhow, like I said, today we have a big show planned, and our team's been researching all over the place. But before we begin, I must first do a short disclaimer, and that's just to let everybody know, like the feds and the FCC, NSA, FBI, or any of the other alphabet agencies, know that anything said on this show is solely my responsibility and not that of FreedomizerRadio.com or our many valued sponsors and advertisers. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts, guests, callers, or chat commentators of Zone 13 do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, opinions, beliefs, or anything else of Freedomizer Radio, their sponsors, or advertisers, whether it be past, present, and even in future broadcasts. All right, now that we have that out of the way, I'm going to bring my wonderful co-host on, give him a proper introduction, and then we're going to start the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my co-host, Scott Ferrarello. Welcome, Scott.
Buongiorno, signorina.
Hey, buongiorno. Not bad. Hey,
Let's throw you with that one, huh?
Hey, buongiorno, Papaginos.
How's your news day? You got a migraine yet from the news?
Oh, God, I got a migraine and a half, man. I was up late last night. Last night I was on Proof Negative's show. He's the boss around here at Freedomizer Radio. He has his own show. He's on 4 nights a week at 9 p.m. Eastern. Anyhow, I was on his show last night, and I stayed up a little bit later. Man, news was hitting all over the place from the middle of the night, and it's still just breaking. We have a lot to get to. I have a whole list in front of me and a stack of notes. But anything you want to bring up before we jump right into the news?
No, just as long as you don't mention Hillary Clinton, I'm good.
Oh, well, we're going to have to mention her shortly, but we have a few things that we have to get to before that. But I may not mention Hillary Clinton in the way that many others are mentioning her. I'm not a fan of Hillary's, but I am a fan of truth. So there's some truths that have come out all day. You should see the stuff that's breaking. Actually, I think the Democrats are doing a hit on her. I don't think the Republicans are smart enough to come up with all this stuff. So I'm thinking this is an inside job. As a matter of fact,
I told you they didn't want that skank anywhere near the presidency.
Yeah, well, you know that the Obamas and the Clintons hate each other. Then you got Hiawatha Warren in the wings, but they have a dark horse too. His name is O'Malley, and he was the former governor. Oh yeah. They got him. They're trying to run him like a dark horse.
The guy that taxed the rain. Is that the same one?
That's him. They love him. You know, we don't like him, but they love him. I don't like anybody, but I'm telling you, they're going to run him like a dark horse. Hiawatha Warren, Elizabeth Warren, she's not going to be the president. Hillary, I think that she moved up her announcement for presidency to tell us that she's not going to run. She's in deep weeds. We'll get to that anyhow. But like I said, there's a couple of things, and one of them is a complete outrage. It's got me out of my mind crazy, so... First, we'll start with a plane that skid off the runway in New York. Now, I don't know why they were even landing planes in blizzard-like conditions, but if you see where this plane stopped after it skid, the full nose of the plane was over the seawall. That's how close they were to falling into the ocean. One of the wings was sheared off. There was nobody hurt, thank God. But from Fox, it says, emergency crews responded Thursday to a Delta aircraft that skidded on a runway at New York's LaGuardia Airport as the region was hit with another snowstorm. The airport announced that it was closed Thursday due to an aircraft incident. It should have been closed before the incident, the way I'm seeing it. But this guy, Aaron Smith, he was a passenger in row 13. He told the station that the left wing was completely sheared off the plane. said he was a little shaken up, but he says it's going to take time for that to sink in. The plane was an MD-80. That's a McDonnell Douglas. Matter of fact, I was just on one of those planes. They're actually a good plane. And it was traveling from Atlanta to New York, and there were 125 passengers, 5 crew members on board. They said that the plane was landing against the wind, which is something that they'd had a tailwind, rather, and they don't usually do that. But it said that they landed with instruments because of the visibility, and maybe they didn't take into consideration the icy runway, but they slid. Man, if I were on that plane, I would have been a nervous wreck. I'd still be crying. Glad everybody made it out okay. So, also, there are drivers stranded in Kentucky, hundreds of them. But this says dozens, but there's a couple of hundred. Vehicles have been stranded for hours on Interstate 65 in Kentucky due to winter storm weather. They call this storm Thor, by the way. Now they're naming snowstorms. It says the heavy snow had piled up all around cars, trapping drivers inside. The shutdown occurred on a stretch of freeway between Elizabethtown and Louisville. So they've been stuck since like 10 o'clock last night. You know, one person says like they got 2 packages of crackers and a bottle of water. Why would you go out knowing that you're expecting a foot of snow and have only some crackers and a bottle of water? Wouldn't you pack a blizzard kit? I don't know how people even get trapped like that. People should be smarter than that by now. They're also stranded on I-24 in western Kentucky, multiple stretches of I-65, and they got like 8 to 10 inches on the ground, and it's still snowing. Wow. All right. Now, you want to get to my outrage because I'm absolutely furious over this?
Sure.
We talked about how the Food and Drug Administration had wanted us to stay off of red meat because it was bad for the planet. Well, now they've taken it further, and they're taking public comment on this situation. Let me read you the story, and then I want to tell you a whole bunch more about this. It's from The Blaze. It says the Obama administration mulls nutrition guidelines that say Americans should eat food with lower environmental impact. Now, they're telling you it's guidelines, but it's not guidelines, ladies and gentlemen. This is a food takeover. The Obama administration is considering a set of dietary recommendations that says Americans need to change the way they eat in order to help protect the environment. Now, I don't know what the Food and Drug Administration has to do with the environment. I would figure that would be the EPA's job. But it goes on. It says the recommendations were put forward by an advisory group comprised of academics from around the country. They're talking about a bunch of groupers. It says the Dietary Guideline Advisory Committee submitted its recommendations to the Department of Agriculture and Health and Human Services in late January. The government is taking comments on those recommendations through April 8th, and that's before they implement this stuff. The recommendations include an entire section on sustainable agriculture that says people should only eat those foods that are more sustainable to produce. Anytime you hear the word sustainable, you are automatically to assume it's Agenda 21. That is their code word. Access to sufficient nutrition. This is where they're going to try to sell it to you as it's for the kids or something. Access to sufficient nutrition and safe foods is an essential element of food security for the U.S. population. Food security, access, those are trigger words too. A sustainable diet ensures this access for both the current population and future generations. The major findings regarding sustainable diets were that a diet higher in plant-based foods, such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and lower in calories in animal-based foods is more health-promoting and associated with less environmental impact than is the current U.S. diet. So now you're all going on a diet, ladies and gentlemen, and you can forget about beef and pork and any of that. That's not in this. They're going to get rid of that. It's for the planet. It suggested that Americans can eat this way by adjusting their diets to the healthy U.S.-style patterns, the healthy Mediterranean-style pattern, and the healthy vegetarian pattern. All of these dietary patterns are aligned with lower environmental impacts and provide options that can be adopted by the U.S. population. It says it also said the advantage U.S. diets has a larger environmental footprint impact than those other diets. Now listen to this. This is the part that you have to pay attention to. The group also delved into tax policy by suggesting that taxes can be used to create healthy food environments. For example, earmark tax revenues from sugar-sweetened beverages, snack foods, and desserts high in calories added sugars or sodium, and other less healthy foods for nutrition education initiatives and obesity prevention programs. It also said higher taxes on sugar-containing foods may encourage consumers to reduce consumption, and revenues generated could support health promotion efforts. So now they're going to put a sin tax on sugar and, snacks, beverages, things like that, to dissuade you from purchasing those items. You see how well it worked in New York on the cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
That's for the money. Do you know what this is? This is backdoor cap and trade. It's carbon reduction. This is all about a carbon scam. We didn't pass cap and trade because it was bad for us. So they're implementing it in the backdoor way. Now, they're nationalizing food. They don't want you to eat beef or pork. They say it's bad for the planet, which is a bunch of hooey. And with these taxes, what small farmer is going to be able to stay in business? So that they're going to nationalize the food. They're going to push you. I'm sorry.
They're going to be taking all his land anyway,
Yep. Well, I said, this is... Go ahead.
They've already sent basically SWAT teams to, people's farms and executed all their hogs. I mean, that was
Absolutely.
8 months ago or something.
Yep. And your health care costs are going to go up if you don't go by this. Now, we talked about the cashless society, right? They're going to know what you buy at the supermarket. So if you buy something with sugar, your Obamacare prices are going to go up. Well, it's bad for you. Or if you buy a steak. They're trying to get rid of cattle altogether. They're saying it's bad for the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, one volcano gives off more gas than all of mankind in the industrial age ever combined.
They're just running out of things to take away from people. So, they just invent new ways to be jerks. And, pretty soon, we can't do anything about it now anyway. We can't get rid of any of these people in Congress or this president or anything. We can't make any changes. And when this goes global, you ain't going to be able to do you ain't even going to be able to complain about it.
You're right. You're not. Especially
right now,
because they're taking over the internet. Who are you going to complain to?
Right. They're having a discussion right now in the Supreme Court about limiting free speech on the internet.
Yep. Definitely. But, right here, you have higher taxes, you have food control, health control, cap and trade, carbon. Now, this is going to fall on the farmers, and they're going to have to do that cap and trade carbon exchange thing if they can afford to stay in business. And this brings in the GMOs, and it brings in Monsanto and the large food producers, and the small farmers out. The cattle ranchers, they're completely out. They're not going to allow them to have cattle. And if they do have cattle, they're going to tax them out of business, just like they did with coal. They're going to regulate them and tax them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is like the old Soviet Union.
That's what I've been saying for years. It's like 1970 Soviet Union.
Yeah, well, we're in a prison here. You don't see the bars, but they're there.
That's right.
And your government is doing this to you. We're supposed to have a government of the people, by the people. This government has nothing to do with the people except to control them. Yeah, they have now regulated you into slavery. They didn't get rid of slavery. They expanded it. That's all you are is a bunch of minions.
They said the best slavery is when people don't even know that they're slaves.
Well, it's about time we start realizing we're already there. When the government can tell you what you can eat, when the government can tell you what school that will teach you and what it's teaching you, when they tell you how you can raise your kids, you can't even let your kid walk down the store or to a playground. You're in a prison, ladies and gentlemen. This is wrong. This is so wrong. And they're taking over your food. They're taking over your farms. They're going to shove you all into one of those miserable cities to live on top of each other and stay a dependent of the government. You can't grow your own food. You can't afford to grow your own food. And if you do, you're going to be taxed on it. And then one of these screwballs might have been Sheila Jackson Lee, but I'm not sure, just said that you're racist if you eat 3 meals a day. She said back in the day when the Europeans came over, the Indians only ate 1 meal a day. The Europeans brought the habit of eating 3 meals a day. So if you eat 3 meals a day, now you're a racist. You're calling Indians savages.
Yeah,
that's how far they're stretching this.
This coming from a 340-pound land monster that hasn't missed a meal her whole life.
Yeah, she never missed a meal. This is true. But now you're a racist. Things are just getting so out of control. And people, come on, man, you're all thinking people. You're all normal people. What is wrong that you can't see this? What's keeping us from fighting back? What is it? What's keeping us? And now
nobody really knows it because the mainstream media doesn't report on anything important. You know?
Yeah, well, it doesn't take the media to see that what they're doing here. I mean, you should be able to see it now in your everyday living, in your supermarket, They tried to tell us the other day that there is no inflation. And then they sent out this chart that says that everything's up by 12%. So that isn't inflation? Well, they got a new word for that now, too? Except purple penguin clips?
They also do a different form of inflation where the prices stay the same, but the quantity of what you get is smaller, you know?
Okay,
so
you're right.
If you used to get crackers, it used to be normal size crackers, you know, about 2 inches, you know, all the way around. Now they're the size of a Cheez-It, but you're paying the same amount. You see, it's sort of like backdoor inflation.
You're right. I looked at a pound of bacon; it weighed 12 ounces. So you're missing 1/4 of a pound now. You only have 3/4 of a pound in the same price.
That's exactly right.
All right, now they've taken away your food. They've taken away your freedom. They've taken away your ability to redress grievances. They've taken away your freedom of speech, your internet, your security for your Fourth Amendment and your persons. Well, now they're taking away your religion. There's a Florida city that is waging Soviet-style crackdowns on churches now. Check this out. This is from Fox. A government crackdown on churches has Christians in Lake Worth, Florida, wondering if they live in the United States or the former Soviet Union. Churches in Lake Worth, population 36,000, have been ordered to acquire business licenses, as if the church has to get the government's permission to preach and pray. But wait, it gets worse, folks. City officials were so concerned about one congregation that they dispatched a code enforcement officer cloaked in a hoodie to spy on Southern Baptist Church that was meeting in a coffee house. Folks, it's like a plot of a Cold War spy novel. Government employees are public servants and prohibited by the Constitution from inhibiting religious freedom, said Matt Staver, founder of the Religious Liberty Law Firm Council. This is a far cry from sneaking around in the church and acting like KGB agents. Staver's calling on city leaders to immediately rescind the business license mandate on churches. He's also representing Common Ground Church, the congregation that was targeted by the city investigator. The church owns and operates a coffee house in downtown Lake Worth. For the past 3 months, it has used the coffee house for a weekly worship service. Prior to that, the congregation rented space in other buildings in the community. Pastor Mike Olive told me there had not been any problems until early last month when he had an encounter with Andy Amoroso, a city commissioner. After we opened up the coffee bar and started doing services, I heard that he told people that we were anti-gay, Olive said, so I went to his shop to ask him about that. I reached out to Amoroso on Wednesday, but he did not return my telephone calls. Pastor Olive told me he tried to convey to Amoroso that the church's message is love God, love people. Our message to the gay community is the same as it is to the straight community, he said. The commissioner, Olive said, did not seem to appreciate his message. He pointed at me and said, "Listen, you better not have a church down there," Olive told me. By the strangest of coincidences, a code enforcement officer showed up for a Sunday service on February 8th. He was wearing a hoodie, and he was armed with a concealed video camera, according to the letter Liberty Counsel sent to the city. The code enforcement officer notes read like something out of a KGB report. I walked back to the coffee bar and was able to visualize, in my opinion, what appeared to be a ministry in progress, he wrote in the report. He documented how he observed people holding what appeared to be Bibles or religious books, as one had a cross on it, and what appeared to be a ministry in progress. I was approached by an unknown man with a cross around his neck, he wrote. I'm surprised the code enforcement officer didn't call up the National Guard for reinforcements. The officer wrote that he was able to capture on my city phone a video which will be attached to this case file for further court presentation. It's pretty shocking stuff for a city that prides itself on being a tolerant, multicultural city. But as we all know, tolerance and diversity do not. It was pretty shocking, Pastor Oliver said. We had no prior warning. The following Sunday, a city employee showed up again and told the church it had 1 week to vacate the building. They were accused of operating a church in a business rental property without a Lake Worth business license. For the record, the church was only licensed to sell Java, not preach Jesus. William Waters, the city community sustainability director, told me they have nothing against the church. They were simply responding to a complaint. We had a complaint that a gathering of people was taking place there in the form of a church, he said. We investigated that and determined, yes, there were people gathered there. So, if 115 people gather for coffee, that's okay. But if they gather for worship, it's against the law. Waters says we have to treat everybody the same.
They're going to get rid of Christianity worldwide, and you're going to see mosques popping up where churches used to be. And they'll be able to preach that in your school, at Home Depot, at wherever they want. But if you're a Christian, you're going to be a second-class citizen. So.
Well, it doesn't matter. People have a right to gather for any reason.
Not anymore. No, not anymore. They proved that in Texas,
political.
They proved that in Texas. You can't even peacefully assemble anymore because the feds will arrest you, take your fingerprints, and confiscate all your computers.
Yeah, well, even if it is a business, you can't even talk about Jesus in a business. When can you talk about Jesus? You're supposed to be able to talk about your religion any way you choose to.
We're supposed to do a lot of things that we can't do anymore. Because there's
no
checks
and balances. You wanted to stand in the middle of the street and talk about Jesus, you could. Nobody has to listen to you.
That was the old America.
Guys, this is getting really bad.
You're living in the 80s,
really bad when you can't sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about Jesus without being penalized
that's hate speech
and harassed.
That's hate speech now. I mean, Muslims, you know what? Muslims can throw gays off of buildings, and that's okay. But if you quote, something against, homosexuality in the Bible, you're preaching hate speech. See, it's all about whatever group you belong to now. And this puppet you have in the White House, he's just going by the playbook of the New World Order, one world government thing. And they're using and the whole thing is to use Islam and atheism and Satanism to destroy all the other religions, and then those will be destroyed, and the only one left will be Satanism / Luciferianism.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right on that.
Well, they write about it in their books. It's not like I'm not a psychic. They've written about this in their books for the last 50 years, but nobody reads anymore.
Yeah,
I'd rather watch Dancing with the Stars and the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm agreeing with you because Muslim seems to be the most favored now group. I mean, we're having Islam shoved down our throats so bad that I'm ready to choke on it. I'm so sick of listening about Islam and Muslims. We even have a Muslim imam that was hired by Holder's Department of Justice to teach inmates. Now, the government is hiring imams to teach federal prisoners. Check this story out.
Think about it. Think about it. If it was any other religion, it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, if it was Hinduism or Buddhism, they're both pretty much peaceful religions. But in order to get us in the most perfect place for switching over to Luciferianism, they chose Islam because of the radicalness in the Quran. What other books of worship, preaches that women are lower than dogs, that just by being born a woman, you know, you've got all these horrible things attached to you, and you're like treated
that's what I was
worse than an animal.
That's what I was going to say, Scott. I mean, hearing people tell me, okay, this is a peaceful religion, and I would like to believe that, but then you see the beheadings, the oppression of women, the launching gays off of buildings, and they're not sorry about it. And then, they're forced converting people, especially crazy people. But Holder hired this guy. He says, this is from the Conservative Tribune. When you're going to hire an individual to teach classes to federal prisoners, you may not want to hire somebody who believes we should give the death penalty to people who haven't even committed crimes. However, it makes a bit more sense when you realize the Egyptian-born imam hired by Eric Holder's Department of Justice called for the death penalty to be applied to infidels. Fawad al-Bailey, an imam at the Islamic Center of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, was contracted by the Department of Justice in spite of the fact the religious leader had called for murdering the Islamic dissenter Ayana Hirsi Ali for what he described as poisonous statements. Ali, the former Dutch member of parliament, whose family fled Somalia, is known for her vocal opposition to Islamic radicalization, especially as it pertains to women. When she was to make a 2007 appearance at the University of Pittsburgh, Johnstown, al-Bailey helped lead an unsuccessful protest against Ali's visit. If you come into the faith, you must abide by the laws, and when you decide to defame it deliberately, the sentence is death, al-Bailey told a local newspaper. Sounds like Eric Holder's kind of guy, huh? The comments, unsurprisingly, drew national ire, and al-Bailey allegedly resigned from the post as the head of the Islamic Center. However, if he ever really did resign, it was only a temporary resignation, since al-Bailey's job application reportedly continues to list his role as the leader of the Islamic Center. Al-Bailey was hired to teach classes in leadership and guidance to federal prisoners by the Department of Justice in contracts worth $12,900. Perhaps of note is the clause in those contracts that reads, I do not endorse, nor will I practice or use language in the institution that will support violence, terrorism, discrimination against other inmates. I would say the DOJ screwed up while doing their background check, except I'm not entirely sure that's the case. Given the kind of ship run by Attorney General Eric Holder, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they thought they should just let it slide. After all, a simple Google search for al-Bailey's name would have revealed the furor the imam had caused back in 2007. Do they not even do an internet search on job candidates? Well, then this article says, let's hope Loretta Lynch runs a better DOJ than Eric Holder has. We know that's not going to happen. The woman is him in a clone version. So there you have it. Now you've got an imam teaching prisoners. And I told people last week about Job Corps. I didn't tell the people at Freedomizer. When I was up in D.C., I met a young man through my family who lives across the street. He is a troubled young man. He has schizophrenia. He hears voices. The voices told him to punch his mother in the face, so he punched his mother in the face. Anyhow, the kid was having problems in school, and they deemed him at risk of dropping out, so they put him in this program called Job Corps. Job Corps is a federal program that rescues children from being dropouts. They give them a more open campus, and they help them to get a GED instead of a high school diploma, but it keeps them in school and it gives them jobs. Well, the young man had converted to Islam. So I had the opportunity to meet this young man, and he was very, very bright to the point of brilliant, but you could tell that he was, not all there. Well, the kid starts telling me that he originally was a fan of Hitler's, and he belonged to Hitler Youth groups, and he moved on from that, and he joined the KKK, and he told me facts about Hitler and World War II and the KKK and all their history, and the kid was completely accurate. He knew these facts as if he were a walking encyclopedia. So I asked him, I said, well, why did you convert to Islam? He said, Job Corps. I said, what do you mean, Job Corps? He said, yeah, the teacher at Job Corps is an imam. And he was so impressive that the kid decided to convert to Islam. Now, the kid is Indian, not Native American Indian, but Indian. His grandmother is a devout Christian. She was furious. But his parents are liberals, and they thought it was great that he had structure. Well, this is the type of kid that they'll train to be a terrorist, and they'll get away with it, too. If this kid pulls a suicide bombing or some attack, what they're going to say is, well, he was a troubled youth and he had mental illness and he was a lone wolf. That's a crock. This kid was converted. And I tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, he's being targeted to perform something. This kid is so into it. And where he is a troubled youth, I only see bad things happening with this kid. And he's very sincere.
Well, do you know that they've been doing this in prisons for the last 30 years? You get special privileges if you convert to Islam and if you're a Muslim in prison.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and that's what they do with everything, okay?
Yep. Astro says that you hit the nail on the head.
They increase the incentives for criminality and behavior that they want, and on one side, and they make it so it's pretty much not prosecutable, or the cops just turn and look the other way, and pretty soon you have an explosion of that in your country.
Yeah.
At the same time, they make, at the same time, they make...
Well, I did get a chance to tell them, I did tell the kid that, you know right from wrong and you know good from bad, and I don't care how messed up you are in the head. If somebody tells you to do something bad, you better think hard about it. Don't just try to fit in. I don't know if I got through to him or not, but...
I doubt it.
This is what they do, Scott, and you're absolutely right. But, I don't know. It's just so messed up. D.C. was a pit, anyhow. All right. You know that Benjamin Netanyahu was in town, and, he gave a speech, and the left is completely flipped out by it because they want this deal with Iran. It doesn't matter if it's a good deal or a bad deal. They just want any kind of a deal. Right now, John Kerry is in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia because he's trying to calm down Iran's neighbors. They're all freaking out that they're going to sign this deal with Iran and let them become nuclear powers, which now they're saying they want nuclear power too. If Iran's going to have nukes, then the Saudis want nukes, the Bahrainis want nukes. Everybody wants nukes now because they have to defend themselves from Iran. Iran's not their friend either. Iran is not our friend. Benjamin Netanyahu was absolutely correct. Iran wants to be in control of the Middle East, and, of course, they have their own religious sect. So they are more than happy to help the United States get rid of ISIS because they're Iran's enemy, too. But Iran is not our friend. Iran would kill us just as quickly. As a matter of fact, how many times have they said, death to America? And then you match that with how many times Israel's ever said that. But Obama wants to be friends with the ones who... America. Now, after his speech, sometime during the middle of the night, the Ayatollah took ill. They rushed him to the hospital. He has prostate cancer, and he had to have emergency surgery last night. His prognosis is not good. The man's dying. So now they're looking for somebody to replace him. I don't know who they're going to put up there. Every one of them is a radical. They got an Ayatollah, Reza Mahdavi Khani, and then they have some other people, cousins and relatives. There's a Amoli Lajani. He's the brother of the parliament speaker. In the meantime, Rouhani is still president over there. But I don't know what it's going to do to this deal that Obama wants. There shouldn't be a deal anyhow because there is no way we should allow Iran to have nukes. And I don't care what people say, we shouldn't interfere with things like that. Well, when it's a direct threat to your country, your countrymen, and your allies, then you have to step up. You can't just say, well, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to sit this one out, which is what we're doing, by the way. Iran right now, Iran's special forces are in Iraq holding operations. Do you think that would have happened before Obama? Iran be allowed to hold operations in Iraq? No way. But now, sure enough, I think that we already have this deal. I don't think that we're waiting to sign it. I think it's already been signed. I think it's already very much implemented. But now Kerry's over there to try to calm people down, and it doesn't seem that that's helping at all. Kerry's going to meet up with the new Saudi monarch, King Salman, and meet separately with the foreign ministers and the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. That's Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Geez, those are the same people that donate to the Clintons. The Sunni-ruled Gulf states are unnerved by Shia Iran's suspected pursuit of nuclear weapons and its increasing assertiveness throughout the region. So, meanwhile, Rouhani's saying that Iran will not make any deal that denies them nukes. So all this talk about a deal with Iran is dead in the water, unless, of course, Obama, bends over and pulls his pants down for them. I don't know what else they want. He's giving them everything.
What she's going to do with the smile on his face? Oh, you know what the whole thing is for? It's so there's this big arms race in the Middle East with all these whacked out dictators that have been stuck in there after NATO has, gotten rid of the mild, moderate dictator. And, in that way they'll be able to attack any country and be totally justified because, they create these boogeymen just like they created Saddam Hussein and General Noriega and Kim Jong-un. Same thing. This is how North Korea got a weapon. Same deal.
Exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. And, Obama's group is saying, well, we're going to have inspectors in there. Yeah, so what are inspectors going to do? Stop it? No, they're just going to record it. They're not going to stop it. They're just going to say, yep, that's going on. And Iran says they're not going to make any deal anyhow. But Netanyahu was right. The hell with them. Tell them don't. Leave the sanctions. Increase the sanctions. They'll be back. Remember, folks, Iran needs the West more than the West needs Iran. There is nothing that Iran can do to us or with us that would make a difference to us. I don't know why Obama's treating them like they're some sort of world superpower. They're not. He's trying to elevate them to that status.
Right, and it's happening. And just think of what this guy promised. This is why it bothers me about Fox News. Now, I don't watch it, but I know that they don't run through a list of all his promises. Oh, he promised he was a Christian and he wasn't going to let Iran, go this route, and every single thing he has said. I mean, every one of them has been a complete lie, except for the bad parts, like fundamentally transforming a country. We didn't need a transformation. We needed a restoration.
Yeah, well, like Giuliani said, if you love something, would you want to fundamentally change it?
He never loved anything. I mean, that guy wouldn't even wear a flag pin, on his cheap polyester suit when he was campaigning in 2008. I mean, they had to twist his arm to wear a flag on his jacket.
Yeah,
I mean, who does that? Who doesn't wear a...
He said he didn't want to wear that flag pin because he didn't want to appear to be taking sides. Taking sides? You should be taking America's side.
That doesn't even make any sense. You're running for the President of the United States and you won't wear a flag? I mean, right there, if that didn't sound alarms off, but nobody vetted this guy, including Fox News. I mean, they have got the budget. They could have had 100, 200, 1,000 O'Keefes out there vetting this guy. And they didn't do anything either.
Nope.
How many? What if George Bush would have? Now I'm no fan of George Bush, but what if when he was running for president, he had changed his name, he had 12 different Social Security numbers, none of his college records were unsealed.
Right.
Nobody really knew who his parents were, and go down the line. And everyone, and every photo you ever saw him in was photoshopped.
Yeah, well, come on. He gave a great speech. He had Greek columns and everything. He had to be okay. He had Greek columns. Oh, God.
Yeah. And the whole time you knew they were selling him like Crest was selling toothpaste.
Yeah, damn well.
Right. I mean, it's like, what is this? Is this a candidate or is it a preview to a movie that's coming out?
Yeah. I mean, they did. They made him a rock star, a superstar. They turned him cool. It was.
And that's what happens
it was really
when you have entire state-run media. There's no checks and balances. There's just complete sham. And these elections are nothing but shams. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, I had somebody on Facebook, good conservative friend of mine, been a conservative friend of mine forever, and just because I didn't bow at the altar of Ted Cruz, you know, this person blocks me. All right? Now, hey, I think he's a good senator. I like stuff that he says. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But number one guy is not going to change what's happening to our country and our planet. The country is gone. It is finished. All right? And you could have an army of Ted Cruzes, and it's not going to change that. Now, if Washington, D.C. was completely, you know, changed to a bunch of Constitution-loving, you know, Americans again, yeah, there could be some big changes. But one guy is not going to make that difference. And not only that, but, you know, Cruz or Walker, they're not going to get anywhere near that election. I mean, you know, they're going to let them, you know, go on these debates and blah, 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 and these rhinos will be, you know, double and triple teaming them. They'll make them come out sounding like kooks. You know, you can't even have an opinion anymore. And even Walker, you know, they ask him simple questions. Well, how do you feel about illegal immigration? How do you feel about gay marriage? And he hem-haws around. How do you feel about Obama? Do you think he loves the country? Do you think he's a Christian? Oh, hem-haw around, you know, beat around the bush. Well, you know, come out and say what you mean, even though it might be unpopular. People want to hear the truth, whether it's popular or not, but he's so afraid of that 3-second soundbite that the 4 state-run networks are going to run over and over and over to make him appear to be a hate monger.
You know, like I started to say, man, I fight with you all the time over this, and you keep saying, you know, we're all done, and I keep saying, no, we're not, as long as we're living and breathing. I've had a little bit of an eye-opener with this Hillary thing, those emails. When you have a Secretary of State who is allowed to set up her own email server aside from our government-issued one, she has complete control of her emails. She's the Secretary of State. She's dealing with foreign dignitaries and leaders all day and all night. She's dealing with corporations. She's not only doing that, but she's dealing with this Clinton Foundation and taking donations in the millions from countries that she is doing business with in her official capacity. And people are telling us to shut up. What about her email? So what if she's got I was told, you know, so what about it? She can do that. Why shouldn't she? What do you mean, why shouldn't she? And then I was told, well, you know, look at Edward Snowden. The government emails were hacked. We don't even know if her emails were hacked and by who. We don't know who sees her emails. The woman travels all the time. The server's in her house. Who goes in and out of her house? Even her maid can see the freaking things.
They
if there's classified information on that, she's withholding it from our national archives, from the history of this United States.
They all have their own server for this reason. So it can't be hacked. You don't even know where the servers are, you know. They're in basements of their mansions and things. And Sheila Jackson Lee was caught doing this as well. She was logging on as some fictitious name and doing state business on.
Right.
And they threatened to, you know, throw her out of office, but they just, you know, slapped her on the wrist and said, oh, don't do that. You got caught. No.
Yeah, Lisa Jackson. Wasn't she Richard Windsor?
I don't know.
Richard Windsor, using a fake name. Hillary's fake name is HDR. And that it's not actually a fake name, but it's not HRC that she usually uses. That's for Hillary Diane Rodham. And her kid is somebody named Reynolds, Diane Reynolds. That's what Chelsea's
They're all doing
name
this.
Is.
And they all do
So everybody's even got an alias. So if you were to look them up, you couldn't find them.
Look at Lois Lerner. I mean, you know, not only was their emails not deleted, but they were on the server. And then to make matters worse, you know, and I bet they're getting a big laugh at us. They put an actual blind person to look for her missing emails.
That was a
clinically
slap
blind
in the
person.
face. Yeah, well, I have nothing
against
blind people.
At us. Yeah, we put somebody on it. They're looking for emails, and the guy's blind, literally.
That's a true story, guys. That's a true story. Look it up. The guy who they had tracking Lois Lerner's emails is legally blind. That's not even a joke.
I know.
That's just a kick in the teeth. But, when we're allowing public servants to do all this business on personal emails that we don't even have any control over. We have no.
They're not called public servants.
She wrote last night, I want the state to release my emails. She didn't say all her emails. She just said, I want them to release my emails. Well, they don't have your emails except for the ones you gave them. What about the ones you didn't? What about those ones? Do we even know? How are we going to check? And damn well, if they took out a subpoena today to go in and get that server, there's nothing on that server.
They rebranded themselves. They're not public servants anymore. Now they're government officials.
Yeah, well, the
Big
day
difference.
after Benghazi, she lawyered up tighter than a frog's rear end, and that's watertight. Her husband got her a lawyer, and she hasn't spoken about it since, except for some blasé, what difference does it make, appearance. And she wasn't even under oath. She wouldn't swear in. So now you have no access to her emails, no access to her government business. That's the people's business, not her personal business. That's our business. We are the government, or at least we used to be until we gave it up. We figure, okay, we went down to the polls and we elected somebody, and now our business is done. We don't have to do anything else. We took our eye off the ball. I don't even know where to go with this. But you know what she's done? It's not illegal. They made it so it's not illegal. The Associated Press come out with 5 talking points, 5 facts. It says, Hillary Rodham Clinton's use of personal email account for State Department business has prompted questions about secrecy and the rules that govern the communications of senior government officials. Clinton backers say the former Secretary of State was doing nothing different than her predecessors, who also used private email addresses, but transparency advocates fear an increasing reliance on personal accounts at the highest level of government, a development that they say could allow officials to hide information from the public. Yeah, what gave that away? Here's 5 things to know about Clinton's emails. There is no simple answer. The Obama administration guidelines stipulate that all agency employees are to use government emails when conducting official business. Under the Federal Records Act, the written communications of officials are supposed to be retained. Clinton spokesman Nick Merrill said that because she emailed her State Department advisors on their government email addresses, her correspondence has, in fact, been retained. Aides say Clinton used a BlackBerry before becoming secretary and continued to use it when she joined the Obama administration. Still, transparency advocates see the personal emails as a way to get around the record requirement. All right, did she violate a law? There's no ban on government employees setting up and using private email accounts. But using those accounts for government business is allowed only if the official retains a copy of each record on her official account or forwards a copy within 20 days. But the law requiring those steps was signed by Obama in November 2014, nearly 2 years after Clinton left the State Department. So she wasn't even bound by those. So it says, who was Clinton emailing? Well, without access to the emails, there's no way to know for sure. Aides say she was in regular communications with about 100 people at the State Department, but her address was not widely known within the department. So they didn't even have her email address, most of them, if there was an emergency. They didn't even know how to contact her.
Well, you know what?
It goes on, but you get the drift.
She helped kill Gaddafi, head of state. It's violation of international law. She ran guns from Libya into Syria, and even whacked an ambassador. This is nothing for her. This is, she's probably laughing about this.
Oh, yeah, she is. And then there's another story that just came out about her, and this concerns her brother. You remember all the goings-on in Haiti, right, and the missing money and all the corrupt deals. Our crew, as a matter of fact, did a lot of research, and we wrote some articles on what was going on in Haiti and, with all the missing money and the Clintons' involvement, Maxine Waters and her husband's involvement, Aristide. Guess what? Hillary Clinton's brother was granted a super rare mining permit from Haiti after the State Department sent Haiti billions and billions of dollars. This is from Breitbart. Peter Schweitzer, as a matter of fact, he's writing a book about it. Hillary Rodham Clinton's brother, Tony Rodham, sat on the board of a self-described mining company that in 2012 received one of only 2 gold exploitation permits from the Haitian government, the first issued in over 50 years. The tiny North Carolina company, VCS Mining, also included on its board Bill Clinton's co-chair of the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission, former Haitian Prime Minister Jean-Max Bellerive. The Rodham Gold Mine revelation is just one of dozens featured in a forthcoming bombshell investigative book by 3-time New York Times bestseller author Peter Schweitzer. According to a Thursday statement from publishing giant HarperCollins, the publisher said the book, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary Rich, is the culmination of an exhaustive 1-year deep dive investigation into the nexus between the Clintons' $100 million personal wealth, the Clinton Foundation, and the decisions Hillary made as Secretary of State. It says VCS's coveted gold mining exploitation permit was apparently such a sweetheart deal that it outraged the Haitian Senate, since royalties to be paid to the Haitian government were only at 2.5%, a sum mining experts say is at least half the standard rate. Moreover, the mining project in Morne Bossa came with a generous ability to renew the project for up to 25 years. Nevertheless, the fledgling company proudly touted its luck in landing the deal. This is one of 2 permits issued today, the first permit of its kind issued in over 5 decades. So, there you have it. Now you got sweetheart deals with gold mines in Haiti, and the people in Haiti are getting screwed again with 2.5%. Even the bookies get 10%.
I didn't even know she had a brother. Boy, he's sure under the radar, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's got a mining company. How convenient, huh? A small mining company.
It's crony corporatism.
Yeah, well, that tells you that they're not just buying gold; they're buying gold mines too. So that keeps more wealth out of the hands of people. That's more wealth going to more wealth. And the Haitians, they got screwed out of billions of dollars. They're still living in cardboard boxes. Nobody knows where the money went. And this Clinton Foundation, they spend more on her travel than they do to give to charitable exploits. And then you got people like the government of Oman and Bahrain and the Saudis and the Kuwaitis and everybody buying influence, paying bribes to these people. And it's a disguise. It's a complete front organization. And so is USAID, too. But the Clinton Foundation, she went from saying she was broke to being $100 million wealthier. And she's running around with a cup in her hand, putting the squeeze on countries that she will be doing business with as the Secretary of State and possibly the President. So now she's outside influenced with money. They own her. And I'm sure they all got all kinds of dirt on her and her husband. And they just run around like king and queen of whatever. He's still the town pump. She went in for a tune-up. She actually looked better than I've seen her look in a while.
Yeah, they blasted her face.
Oh, yeah, she was nipped and tucked and lost some weight and either got real good bras or a boob job. Yeah, she looked pretty good in her little speech yesterday. And then she says, "Don't you want to see a woman president?" I wanted to puke. I'm a woman. Yes, I would like to see a woman president, but not because she's a woman, because she's qualified, because she loves this country, because she loves our Constitution. Yeah, I would vote for that woman, but not just because of what's in her pants. I don't care what's in her pants. Her gender doesn't make her any more qualified than someone's skin color makes them qualified. It's just another shiny thing.
Our country's being run by women now, okay? Valerie Jarrett, Samantha Power,
Susan Rice, Hillary.
Susan Rice, Yeah, the puppet in chief, he doesn't do nothing but play golf and smoke crack, so.
Yeah, well, I'm really upset about this. And while we're on the subject of emails, let's talk about Elijah Cummings. Now, Elijah Cummings was working back and forth with Lois Lerner, who you just mentioned, and the IRS and the Justice Department. When he was on the House Oversight Committee, we all knew it anyhow. Elijah Cummings was just protesting too much. He was interrupting. He was, just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, finally, Catherine Engelbright, the founder of True the Vote, she is now taking him to court for this. So he may have some, the Oversight Committee didn't do anything to him, but this woman might have a lawsuit here, so she's trying it. But this is from Jim Hoft. It says, Democrat leader Elijah Cummings could face up to 5 years in prison for illegal attacks on True the Vote. Last April, House Oversight Chairman Darrell Issa released a report implicating Democrat Elijah Cummings, he's a Democrat from Maryland, in colluding with the IRS and Lois Lerner against the nonpartisan voters' right group True the Vote. Catherine Engelbrecht, the founder of True the Vote, testified before Congress in February. She was targeted by FBI, IRS, ATF, and OSHA after she filed for tax-exempt status for her voter rights group. Engelbrecht said this during her testimony before Congress and Cummings. Frankly, to sit before my accuser and be silent in the face of what he did was unconscionable. This week, the House Oversight Committee released more emails that prove the IRS was feeding Representative Cummings with confidential tax information on the voter fraud prevention group, True the Vote. Town Hall reported the new IRS emails released by House Oversight Committee show staff working for Democratic ranking member Elijah Cummings communicated with the IRS multiple times between 2012 and 2013 about voter fraud prevention group True the Vote. True the Vote was targeted by the IRS after applying for the tax-exempt status. It says the information shows that the IRS and Cummings staff asked for nearly identical information from True the Vote President Catherine Engelbright about her organization, indicating coordination and improper sharing of confidential taxpayer information. So here they are. Here's the guy who's supposed to be overseeing them, and instead of overseeing them, he's getting information from them and attacking the people that they were attacking. That's not oversight. That's joining the attack. He wasn't overseeing anything. And here we're getting away with it.
And will. Remember, he was the one hopping up and down calling everyone a racist for asking Lois Lerner simple questions.
Right. You're absolutely right.
You know, the whole system is such a joke. It's almost hard to even comment anymore. Because, you know, and all I do is complain and be a cynic for 2 hours because, you know, there's no point. The game is so rigged now that there is no hope for anything. I mean, this Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, I mean, you might as well have the most left-wing Democrats in their position right now. The House and Senate may as well be complete Democrat. I mean, here this guy is in his lame duck period, and he's going to accomplish more in this lame duck period than most presidents accomplish in 8 years. Mm-hmm. And it's all going to be at the expense of this country and everything it stood for.
Yeah, I mean, they're acting like Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi is still the majority. Right. You know, are they that proud and beaten into submission?
That's why they're still there. There is no way that the people in their states were dumb enough to vote for these a-holes again. You know, it's all voter fraud gets them in. They're not even worried about it. They don't even pretend to be, you know, conservatives or on the right side or anything. I mean, you know, every few years when Mitch McConnell's running for office, he comes out on stage holding a gun. Oh yeah, that's really going to do it for us.
Yeah, that
you know, and
people fall.
And then they go in there and they roll over, and it's not because they're cowards. It's not because they have no spine. No, it's because they're all following the same script, and it's really hard to fake when you own both the House and Senate. So when it's this hard to fake it, they just roll right over, and everybody like Sean Hannity, who thinks this system is still working, just can't believe it. He just don't understand.
Yep. You're absolutely
you know what?
right.
Think about it. A long time ago they said it only takes about $250 million to buy everybody in D.C., you know, that has any real power. And
That's cheap.
Look when the vote on John Boehner came up. All right, not even Trey Gowdy voted against him. I mean, and I thought if anybody would vote against him, it'd be him. No, the only people that voted against him was like Louis Gohmert and a couple others. The entire Republican Party should have voted him out. That was the chance.
Yeah. Well,
and they caved because guess what? The NSA has probably got tapes on every one of them, or somebody in their family doing something. To send them to prison forever. And they said, you know what? You play ball or we do this. I mean, it's typical, mafia style intimidation, threats, bribes, and whatever to get your way.
I bet you the mafia is jealous. They're wishing they could run an organization as corrupt as this one.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? Why'd they even get rid of the mafia? It was because they were cutting into too much of their business,
True.
I mean, the FBI and the whole RICO Act was created just to take down Italian mafias.
Yeah. Hey, we got to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off. And there's even so much more to talk about, guys. Don't go anywhere, but I got to take this break. You ready, Scott? We'll take a break.
Yeah, go for it.
You are listening to Freedomizer Radio, where freedomizers freedomize freedom.
And, ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. You're listening to Zone 13, right here at Freedomizer Radio. I'm Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host, Scott Ferrarello, is here with me, too, and all our colleagues are out there in the chat rooms, too. Lynn, Anna, AstroTurf, maybe Kelshu is around. Sure Red and Kat are around, too, so say hi to everybody when you get over there. All right, when we left off, we were talking about this crazy, crazy government and all the rotten, corrupt things that they've been doing. Well, there's so much more. I mean, they're taking over the Internet. There's just so much to talk about. Before we talk about that, though, last night, the U.S. ambassador to South Korea was slashed in a razor attack. He ended up with 85 stitches in his face. His hand was cut, too. The suspect is in custody. The ambassador's name is Lippert. Well, I looked around a little bit about this ambassador. Do you know that he was the point man between Obama and Odinga back in 2008? If you don't know who Odinga is, that's Obama's cousin, who was part of the Orange Democrat Society, Orange Democrat Movement, ODM. That's another Soros-orchestrated color revolution. Like I said, he's Obama's cousin, too. Obama had violated the Logan Act. Yep, down in Kenya. Obama had violated the Logan Act. He's a hardcore Islamist. And after Odinga became president, he murdered so many, opposition people and Christians, but nobody said a word about that. As a matter of fact, you know who his campaign manager was? Dick Morris. Dick Morris that comes around and he's telling us all about how bad the Democrats are and how bad Hillary is. Well, he was Bill Clinton's campaign manager, too. So don't trust Dick Morris. He's a snake.
Yeah, well, that's why he turned into a quote-unquote conservative columnist because, he didn't get his payoff from the Clintons, so he turned on him.
Mm-hmm. True. And there's more money in conservatism. He's likes opposition. He was against George Bush, but as soon as George Bush was out and Obama was in, then he went with the opposition because there's money in it. He's a snake. Don't trust him. You remember when he was telling us all about the polls and Romney was ahead and, the big rosy outlook? He was full of it. He knew he was full of it. He's nothing more than another operative.
Right.
So do not trust Dick Morris. Let's see here. White House is pushing Israel to recall their ambassador. They're saying, we're not the ones who created this, but Obama's got another 2 years in office, and he doesn't think that he's going to be able to work with the ambassador that Israel has chosen. So they want Netanyahu to find another ambassador, or they're not going to talk to him anymore. So, they're really putting the squeeze on
and just like I said, that speech, it didn't matter at all. And you know, I have to agree with Obama on this, which it pains me to say, but he said nothing new. In fact, he said that so nothing new that a speech from Andrew Breitbart that he made after a Netanyahu speech 4 years ago, if you listen to it, it sounds like he just heard the one the other day. I mean, all he's basically doing is setting up a reason to go to war with Iran, and he knows that he can't do it alone. I mean, there's no way. Iran now has so many underground bunkers that not even a bunker buster is going to get it. All right?
Yeah, well, it's so bad now that Obama, even if Israel did want to move on it, Obama threatened to shoot Israel out of the sky. Wasn't even going to let them fly over Iraq to get to Iran.
Well, and that's just all talk too, because
but he's
like I said last week, Israeli pilots and jets are just as good, if not better, than ours.
Yeah, well, not if they don't have the ammo and the bombs to drop. He has cut back on parts to airplanes. He's cut back on munitions, restocking parts, things like that, things that, that we do business with them from munitions companies, even Boeing and
they have it, and if not, they're manufacturing their own. That's just more BS.
They should be, but now they're not even able to get the components and stuff, so they definitely have to manufacture their own. But in the meantime, Israel's our ally. Netanyahu is another leader who loves their country. Nobody likes Putin, but I got to tell you something. Putin loves his country. Everything Putin does, he does for his country. And that's the same with Netanyahu, the same with the King of Jordan. They're playing in a global game, but they still have their patriotism and love of country. Our president doesn't have that. I think Giuliani was right. Obama hates us. He thinks we're bad. He agrees that we're the great Satan. He thinks that we should be punished, and he's been punishing us. He wants us to be more like these oppressive countries. He has done everything in his power to take over every aspect of our lives. He wants to nationalize everything. He's got rid of coal. Most of our power plants run on coal. So before you get rid of coal, don't you think you should have something to replace it with?
A
couple of windmills and a couple of solar plants that Reed people have aren't going to provide the electricity that this country needs.
The whole reason why he's in there is to take this country down, and that's what's going to happen. And with this Hillary thing, I've been saying all along, Hillary was not going to make it, to this president thing, this fantasy that everybody has had about her. It's probably going to be Jeb Bush, but don't be surprised if Obama declares a national emergency and stays in there for another couple years. Because in 2008,
that would be.
In 2008, they were interviewing him. He goes, "Yeah, well, in 10 years, I'll be leaving office and blah blah blah." And he knows that 2 terms is 8 years. So why did he say 10?
That's a good question.
I mean, I do
remember that.
That's not a slip. Just like what he said, I visited 57 countries or states, and I got 1 more to go. And everybody said, "Oh, he thinks there's 58 states in the United States." And it's like, well, there's 57 Islamic states.
Right.
Maybe he was missing, slipping on that. I mean, these people don't say
things.
Signal. The only time he ever says anything that you can kind of count on is when it's off teleprompter and it's sort of by accident, when he's trying to wing it.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
But when he says 10 years, I mean, and then they're always comparing him to FDR and Lincoln, who people might like Lincoln, but this guy was going to have Southern governors arrested because they didn't want him, they didn't want to go along with this free slavery thing. Well, whether freeing the slaves was right or wrong isn't the point. You don't threaten to have other governors arrested because they disagree with your politics.
Right. You're right about that. That's like those People's Republic of Texas. Those guys were just having a meeting. And, they're hardliners. They strictly adhere to the Texas Constitution and the United States Constitution and the original agreement that Texas had with the Union when they first joined. They still maintained the ability to cede from the Union should the need arise. They maintained their land. They never ceded any land to the feds, even though the feds came in and took land there. That was illegal. These people know that, but they were having a meeting the other day, over the weekend, at a VFW post. The cops come in and raided them like they were America's most wanted. You know, last I heard,
fingerprinted them, handcuffed them, confiscated their
photographed
computers.
Them. Yeah, seized their property. Well, last I heard, the Fourth Amendment hadn't been rescinded.
And the First Amendment of freedom to assemble peacefully.
Right. They were doing nothing but having a meeting at a post.
Even George Bush, when he was in office, he says, I'm against dictatorships unless I'm the dictator. I mean, he made that off-the-cuff statement one time. And when you have a government like we have now, where there's no checks and balances, when there's no opposition, where there's no one to stop someone, I mean, he can stay in there as long as he wants. He can decide, we're at war, just like FDR or whoever, and say, you know what, I'm staying in a third term. He can decide to do away with term limits. You know, he can. There's a million different ways he can declare a national emergency.
Right.
I mean, so
you're absolutely
I wouldn't
right.
even,
I'm worried about that.
I wouldn't even count on an election. But if there is one, it's going to be Jeb Bush, and all that's going to be is Obama 3.0, just like Obama
it's a
was
lateral move.
George Bush 2.0.
Yeah, it's not even up or down. It's a lateral move. You know, and here they are taking over things without even Congress. So does Congress even count anymore? Does the court even count? Valerie Jarrett put out a notice how she was so excited that they had taken over the Internet. You're already seeing what taking over the Internet is doing. You know, they're telling you that they're going to take it over, and it's already happening. It's already done.
Congress is completely ceremonial now. The House doesn't write laws anymore. You can be the ATF and just decide to ban bullets, and you can be the Department of Homeland Security and just decide that executive amnesty is going to work. We're just going to process as many as possible. We're just going to get rid of the border security and blah blah blah. I mean, there is no Congress, there is no rule of law, there is no legislation that even needs to be written anymore. When you have
I'm glad you brought up
the
that
government,
amnesty.
They just make it up as it goes.
I'm glad you brought up that amnesty because Texas Governor Abbott said that Obama misled the federal judge the other day. That's not misled. That's called lied in the real world.
Yeah.
Well, he lied to the judge.
So why sugarcoat it? Why does he sugarcoat it and say misled? Why doesn't he come right out and say what it is?
Because
I'm tired
of the word
beating
gymnastics.
around a bush and sugarcoating things for me.
Yeah, well, he said the Obama administration misled the federal court and issued thousands of amnesty documents illegally, which he did. Last time we were on air, we told everybody that Obama had sent all those federal workers home so that they could put as many illegals into the computer as they could possibly get in there before this decision came down. Well, they didn't stop when the decision came down, and they have 140,000 people that were entered into the computers. Once they're entered into the computers, they have what's called pending status. So that stops any further ICE action against them. So even though the court told him don't do it, he did it. And he's not sorry. He said tough.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have to. He's above the law, and so is everybody else in D.C. They're all above the law. That's why it's so great to be in the ruling class, and it always has been.
Yeah, well,
beginning of time.
yesterday the Supreme Court was holding hearings on King versus Burwell, and that is the Obamacare lawsuit that's up there. Now, Gruber told us himself that the states that did not set up exchanges were going to be punished by not being eligible for subsidies. So now they've decided, well, they didn't really mean that in the law. Justice Scalia said, you wrote the law so vague and nobody had time to read it, and the only thing that wasn't vague was you were trying to punish the states by not giving the subsidies. So right there, that tells you that the lawsuit is valid. But now Obama says that he's going to bypass the Supreme Court on that, too.
Why not?
Apparently the use of executive action would be justified by the White House due to pain and suffering. An anti-Obamacare ruling would cause millions of Americans. Obama would attempt to convince the nation his use of unprecedented authoritative power would be, in essence, a rescue operation conducted by his administration. So he decided he is the law, and he's deciding before the court even decide that the court is wrong, and he said that he's just going to issue an executive order, and they're going to have to take him back to court. In the meantime, those Obamacare subsidies will stand because, they'll just find another way. And he says that he's very interested in raising taxes without Congress, too. You heard about that, right, Scott?
Well, even if the Congress did shut down the amnesty, he'd just give everybody in Mexico refugee status, and they could come here anyway. So there's always a way around it.
Yeah, well, he said if McConnell, the leader of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, want to have a vote on whether what I'm doing is illegal or not, they can have that vote. I will veto that vote because I'm absolutely confident that what we're doing is the right thing, he told a group of organized Democrats.
That's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And that's when they say, you know what, we're going to impeach you now because you just said that. But, you don't have any checks and balances, and so they just play this game. Like, we're powerless. We can't do anything. We're powerless. And, people aren't paying any attention to any of this because most people don't know anyway. You got such a dumbed-down society, they can't even tell you who the Speaker of the House is. You should do that sometime. You should walk down the street in Florida and just ask 20 people who the Speaker of the House is. Hey, who's the Speaker of the House? I'll bet you anything 8 out of 10 people get it wrong. Okay?
I don't doubt that at all. I've been out there. I know they're all mush brains. They couldn't tell you anything. You figure that when they do the man in the street things, that they're looking for brain-dead twits, and it's not. Those are just a really good example. One of our colleagues, Vicki Neeson, she's known as Snoop Chick around here. She had a show on Freedomizer. She wrote a great article the other day. Everybody picked this article up, including Joe Miller. But she writes, a recent caller to the Mark Levin show, Susan Payne, a contributor to WCBM, a Baltimore radio station, inadvertently received an invitation to a White House conference call regarding immigration, the details which are shocking. During the conference call, attendees explained their plan through immigration to build a country within a country, then ultimately destroy the U.S. Let's first take a look at the immigration plans as explained through the media. On November 20th, 2014, USA Today's journalist Alan Gomez outlined Obama's upcoming speech about immigration. He wrote that the president will protect about 5 million undocumented immigrants from deportation. They will not get U.S. citizenship or legal permanent residence known as green cards, but they will be able to live in the United States without fear of deportation, get a work permit, and a Social Security number. They will also be able to travel freely back and forth to their home country. The following day, Obama issued a memorandum creating welcoming committees and fully integrating immigrants and refugees, into which he stated, I am establishing a White House task force on new Americans, an interagency effort to identify and support state and local efforts and integration that are working, and to consider how to expand and replicate successful models. The task force, which will engage with community business and faith leaders, as well as state and local elected officials, will help determine additional steps the federal government can take. Anyhow, you can find a copy of that memorandum, too. But it says in Section 2 of the memorandum, under mission and function of the task force, it states that these agencies will review the policies and programs of all relevant executive departments to ensure they are responsive to the needs of new Americans and the receiving communities in which they reside. He goes on to state, I'm establishing the White House task force. Anyhow, the cryptic phrases like receiving communities and new Americans can be explained through the shocking conversation on the White House conference call, which seems to be one of planning sessions. According to Susan Payne on the Mark Levin show, there were 16 representatives of Obama's cabinet present on the call. Celia Nunez, top advisor to the president and chairperson of the White House task force, hosted the call. Ms. Nunez also served as the White House Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. A longtime civil rights advocate, she worked as senior vice president for the Office of Research, Advocacy, and Legislation on the National Council of La Raza. Susan stated that the discussions on the call weren't centered around 5 million illegals, as reported in the media, but rather 13 to 15 million illegals coming to the country as refugees. Ms. Nunes told the group that illegals will be redesignated as receiving communities. They will be classified as receiving communities and morph into what was established as an emerging immigrant community that could grow like seedlings and need to be in fertile soil. Not my words, but the words of the task force. The web conference attendees went on to say that the seedlings will mature and eventually take over the host, as the immigrants will come out of the shadows and push the American citizens into the shadows. The White House will be developing a country within a country. Yes, on the call they confirmed the new Americans will develop a country within a country, because these immigrants would not assimilate but navigate. They will not be part of America. In effect, the illegals would grow as a separate nation, a nation within a nation. Eventually, they will become stronger and conquer America. Americans will be in the shadows when the new Americans take over. This is the transformation that Obama promised. Mark Levin commented that this has been in the work for years, and yet he's never heard of it. So how would these illegals be financed, according to the task force? No problem. According to Susan in the conference call, American taxpayers will pay for everything. Can you imagine that? That's the plan.
Yeah. It's North American Union, and they've been planning this forever, you know. Of course, you wouldn't know that because mainstream media never talks about real things, real issues. Nah. They'd rather talk about what some has-been governor thinks about that the sky is blue.
Right. Man, we're running out of time here. But there's one last thing I wanted to tell everybody, and it's about a deadly bacteria release in Louisiana at a lab. They don't know how it happened, but it says the incident has raised concern that the lab may have contaminated the facility ground. They can't identify how the release occurred. Anyhow, this was at Tulane, and it says the dangerous, often deadly type of bacteria that lives in soil and water has been released from a high-security laboratory at the Tulane National Primate Research Center in Louisiana. So this kills monkeys. There's 2 primates dead. Plus, there's a federal inspector and an employee at the lab that are sick. They said that the primates were kept far away from the lab, so they don't know how it got to the primates, but something bad happened there. And we'll talk about that more on our next show.
I wonder.
Any closing? Yeah, really. Any closing remarks for our guest?
Comment. Get ready for bubonic plague to make a startling resurgence on the world stage, because someone's gonna, forget and leave the door open. I mean,
this bacteria is called Burkholderia pseudomale, and it's primarily found in Southeast Asia.
Just Google elites for population reduction. You'll have everybody from David Rockefeller to Bill Gates.
Yeah, well, there's 5 layers of security that bacteria had to pass before it got out the door. So obviously the security isn't so great. All right, say goodnight.
All right, see you later, everybody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Ferrarello. Thank you, Scott. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today, and we want to thank you for tuning in to Zone 13. Our listeners, callers, and colleagues, I'd like to thank you. As always, a special thank you to Scott Ferrarello, my awesome co-host. Stay tuned to FreedomizerRadio.com all week to keep up with the latest news and information you can actually use, and we'll see you here next Thursday at 3 p.m. On that note, good night, America. Zone 13 out.